And we are live.
Hey folks, Scott and I are back with another great topic. So this week we're talking all about barking. I know barking's a really big one that I hear with my clients and just from dog owners in general. But barking, there's a lot to know about barking and different types of barking. So we're kind of going to go through what barking is, how to what it's caused by, and some things you guys can do to help your dog kind of get through that. But let's do an Archie check-in. How's
Yes,
Archie? Does Archie bark at all for anything, or what is he?
he
What's up with his
does. He
barking?
does. So we live in a condo. So whenever there's a certain volume level of noise in the hall, then he gets excited and he wants to
Mhm.
protect or whatever he wants to do, and he barks at
Yeah,
the door. If he hears some rumbling, he will also rumble with a growl. He might even be sitting on the couch and he'll just like,
yeah,
"Rrrr." And then if he really hears some noise or hears someone like
yep.
getting up or some real disruption, uh, it's gotten a little bit better over the past year or two, I
Hmm.
guess. But he will like bark, brr, type of thing, and go to the door, let us know there's
Yep.
an intruder, even though there isn't an intruder yet.
Intruder. Yeah.
Hopefully there's not. Or if someone
Hmm.
comes to the door that we actually are expecting, then he'll get excited and bark when they come, and then he'll roar, and then he'll be excited when they show up, type of thing. I would say that that's
Exactly.
the most part. Otherwise, the only
Hmm.
other time is just like reactivity here and there.
Hmm.
But otherwise, he's pretty quiet. Like out and about, he's pretty quiet,
Yep.
other than reactivity. But just that noise in the hallway type of thing. So
Exactly. Yeah.
it's a
And
bit
that's a
different.
common one too, especially if you live in an apartment building or if you live
Yeah,
in a building with other neighbors. And especially if there's dogs around you and one dog starts barking for another apartment, then it triggers your
yeah,
dog. So it's just one of those things. But with barking, barking is not just barking. There's different types of barking, and I'll talk to you about what Archie was doing. So,
yeah.
folks, I want to go through the different types of barking so that when your dog's barking, you'll know how to identify it and what it is. So, barking falls into a few categories. So, one type of barking there is boredom barking, and so boredom barking is essentially when your dog is left alone and they don't get enough exercise or mental stimulation. So dogs are kind of like kids, and not they're not like kids, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
they have a lot of activity levels, and they get very excited. So sometimes they get bored, and so they'll bark if they're bored. So you just want to make sure that you're giving your dog enough exercise and things to do, so they're not bored and barking for no reason. So have Archie ever did that? Like, have you ever heard him like we at work just like bark for no reason? You're like, what is he barking for? Just out of curiosity.
Not so much that he will demand bark, or if he gets excited, then he'll bark and try to hurt because he's a herding dog. So he will like
Yep.
if he knows if we tell him he's going somewhere he loves, like agility, or if he's going to like my grandma, my
You're like
parents,
going to grandma's house.
yeah, he will like try to rush us, and so he'll get very
Yep.
anxious and very excited, and then he'll like demand bark. But I haven't heard so
Mhm.
much like bored barking, I guess, out of him. But that might
Yeah,
just be
yeah.
because of the breed. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yep. Nope. So that's demand barking, but we'll get into that one.
yeah,
So another type of barking that can happen is separation anxiety barking. So it's a little different than boredom barking because it's characterized by them being home alone. But there's also behaviors involved, like they will be soiling in the home. They may have destructive behavior. So it's a little bit more than just them being bored and you're not being home. So separation anxiety barking, that's like a common one I hear, especially with folks who are struggling with separation anxiety with their dogs. So they're definitely hearing those barking. Another type of barking is barrier frustration barking. So that often comes along with dogs being left in the backyard too long or in the cars too long. And I talk about this in my classes and with clients. Dogs being on leash, that's technically a barrier for them. Leashes are man-made things. I don't think they had them back in the days when dogs were around.
yeah,
But you put a dog on a leash, is very restricting for them. And when they're trying to like meet their doggy friends and they get excited and stuff and they start pulling, that's like a barrier and it gets kind of frustrating. So with that being said, we'll talk about that the treatment stuff, but just for barrier barking, you want to just make sure that when you're walking your dog on a leash, that you're making it loose so it kind of stimulates them having a little bit more freedom. So that's just a little tip for barrier barking. Um, the next one, which Scott was talking about, is demand barking. That's like a common one, a most popular one. So what that is essentially dogs barking for attention, and the bark sounds a little bit different. So it's just a persistent bark, 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 back to back over and over again. And so that's ideally your dog barking to you for attention, whether they want a treat or whether they want to go out to the bathroom, they want your attention in some form of way. So in that case, if your dog is demand barking, you don't want to give them attention right away because you just feed it into it. And you have to remember dogs will do what works. So in that case, if you have a dog that's demand barking, you want to wait for a few seconds until they stop. And then you can say, hey, what do you want? Or, usually you know what your dog wants. So the whole point is you want to wait till there's a little pause and then you can, pay attention to them for the demand barking. The next type of barking, which is also common, is watchdog barking, which is triggered by sight and sound. And or people passing by, slamming car doors, or even cats or birds on the lawn. So essentially, it's just what it sounds like, watchdog barking. So whether your dog's at the window, just walking by until they see a trigger, they're barking, or like, Archie, they're hearing noises upstairs and then they start barking. So that's essentially watchdog barking. And what you can do about watchdog barking is you can train your dog to go to a place, go to mat, or go to their crate. For instance, you could train them to go someplace and lay down. So recall is kind of like the first thing you want to work on with your dog, because you want to be able to call them from wherever they are to come to you so they can lay down. So you can teach them recall to come to you, but also in addition to that, you want to teach them some type of go to mat, go to place, go to stay. So when you call them away, they can go lay down. And that would kind of help with the watchdog barking. Because again, remember, dogs will do what works. And another thing about watchdog barking, just as a reminder, close the curtains if they're barking out the window. And for Archie or dogs that are in an apartment setting or a building type setting, you can also put on white noise or music. And remember, I'm a big fan of situational awareness. So if there's certain times in trigger blinds in the evening. So just be aware of the times where your dog may be most triggered so that you can start to help them with that. So far as I think I talked to you guys a bit about treatments for some of the barking. So we know that watchdog barking, you want to have your dog, do recall, go to a place and teach something like that. For demand barking, you can teach the quiet cue. That's essentially what it's called. But in the meantime, to kind of work your way through that, just wait until there's a slight pause, few seconds, and then you can turn to your dog and give them attention. And that way you're not rewarding them for the demand barking. And then for the, what do we have here? For the separation anxiety barking, ideally, you don't want to leave your dog home alone. That requires a little bit more additional training. So you may want to work with a trainer around that. But in the meantime, you want to not leave your dog home alone and contact the trainer so you can start working on some separation anxiety stuff. But in the meantime, what you can do is work on small moments of separation. And I talked about this in the separation anxiety live. But what you can do is if you're going to the bathroom, leave your dog outside the door. If you're going to check the mailbox and it's at the end of the street, leave your dog out there. So anytime you're going away for brief seconds, you want to leave your dog so that they're used to being home alone. So far as Archie, in his, in his not barrier frustrate. Yeah, the watchdog barking. So have you tried any of those things with him? Or is it not that bad? We're like,
For in our condo, it's not too bad. The one thing that's come up with my parents is they have like big windows that looks out onto the back, and every once in a while they have wild turkeys that come into their backyard and try and eat the bird seed. And so he freaks out when he eats. And so lately he's been like not just barking but jumping up and putting his paws on the glass and like
and grandma and grandpa like, Archie, no.
They're not impressed. So we got to work on that. Probably next time we go up, we're gonna work on that training. So get him away from that. If we can't close sometime, like if he doesn't see the turkey, he doesn't know they're there, so he won't bark. Working on just sort of behind before it happens, just getting him to a spot and then work on that. So I think that would be the next step in training, especially up there because more windows. The squirrels usually tease them, but don't get them going that much. The turkeys, because of their size, it's quite it's quite triggering, I would say. So.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about. So the piggyback off that, I have worked with clients who they don't have curtains and can't close the window, or the way their house is set up is like an open floor plan, so the dog can go to the top of the steps and perch out like my dogs do. Yeah. So in that case, it makes it a little bit tricky, but it's still possible. The main idea is that you don't want to have your dog continue to practice behavior because it's going to make it harder to change. So until you can teach Archie recall or your dog recall or something like that, you want to technically go get them. You can lure them away, and if they're going to keep on running back and forth, and even though you lure them away, you can try putting them in a crate or a pen area, letting them settle down a little bit, and then bring them back out. But ideally, just keep on. I know it's a lot. You have to go to the window, come on, get down. But in the meantime, you're going to be teaching them some type of training so that you're not doing that all the time. But that's the way to manage it, because they will keep on doing that. But I hope you guys gain some more knowledge about barking, different types of barking, because I think this is the one that most folks are surprised by, because barking's just not one bark fits all. That's so funny. One bark fits all. But I hope you guys gain some good ideas, good tools, and kind of have an idea of what barking is and how to work around that. I hope you got some good tools for Archie. Yeah. Do you have anything to piggyback off of, or you want to tell the folks before we wrap up?
If you have any questions about barking, I know it is like Pam was saying, essentially not one size fits all, not one bark fits all. So there are a lot of nuance. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments. Shoot Pam a DM through Facebook, Instagram. There's always a website as well. Check it out there too. Have any questions? Otherwise, let us know. But otherwise, we're pretty good, and we will see you next week. Anything you want to wrap up with, Pam?
No, that's it.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone have an awesome week, and we will see you next Wednesday. Enjoy the week.